If you ever find yourself in this man's position, just do what this man did and you'll be perfectly fine. Because not only did God heal this man physically, but he completely changed his life. And if you don't believe that God is real, I literally cannot see how you wouldn't believe God is real by the end of this video. Because literally the only words you're going to be able to say at the end is, wow. This man's life made a 180, and this thing can happen for you today too. He was literally in a gang and he should have died, but God saved his life. Watch this, you will not regret it. So this story takes place with a man named Brian Whitener. And I don't know how old you are watching this video, but when Brian was only 14 years old, he got into a gang. And this gang was called the Skinheads. In this gang, it was violent. And because Brian was in this gang, he got beat up a lot. He said that in the town that he lived in, violence was a very prominent thing. And everywhere you went, there was violence. If you didn't get beat up, you got shot, and many people died. You see, Brian, he came from a broken home. And he grew up with his grandmother. But get this, his grandmother was an alcoholic. She drank all the time. So Brian didn't really have anyone to raise him in the right way to go. So it turned out that Brian actually raised himself. Nobody taught him the things of life. The only path he knew was the dark path that the people who in his life took. At the age of 14, Brian started getting tattoos all over his body. And not only did he get them on his arms and his body, but he got them on his face. He covered up his entire face with these gang tattoos, and he said he got specific tattoos that would get him into fights just because he liked violence. As he progressed in age, Brian had all these scars on his body. He was not in good standing with the law and with the police. He had a record on his life, and things were not going very well for Brian. He said that he got to the point where he basically had nothing going for him. He had no future ahead of him, so he just decided to drink his life away. He said there was nothing positive in his life, and he got to the point where he was sick of the violence. But you see, Brian couldn't go to anybody and talk about these things because he said if he went to any of his gang member friends, if he went to anybody in the town, they would get mad at him and label him as a traitor, and he would probably have gotten shot. The only way he knew how to get rid of this problem was to drink away his problems. But then suddenly one day, he sees this girl and he thinks she's beautiful, and her name is Julie. He goes over to this girl and he said instantly he fell in love. It wasn't too long after that they got married. And so he decides, I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna move away. He moves 10 hours away, he gets a job, and he quits with the gang. He said because he moved away and because he got married, his gang members got jealous and they were mad at him because he couldn't do their business or their work anymore. But it wasn't soon after that he got a full-time job and he had a baby boy. So one day, he gets a call from his gang leader, and the gang leader says, Brian, you have a choice to make. Now that you have a family and you still have a gang, are you gonna choose your gang or are you gonna choose your family? And guess what Brian chooses? His family. So eventually the gang members and the gang leader gets very mad and he starts sending death threats to Brian and his family. Because you see, if you know anything about a gang, if you're in it and you decide to leave, it's not just something you can retire out of. You're in it forever. So he starts getting these death threats and his family starts getting these death threats, and he is constantly wondering when these death threats are gonna come to pass. He said that these death threats would never stop, and there were times he would wake up at 3 a.m. to a phone call. He would pick up the phone and there would be death threats of they're gonna come in and kill his family. He said that for years him and his family were on red alert and they had their eyes constantly wide open, looking behind his back, wondering when they were gonna come through his front door and end him and his family's lives. But that's when the story takes a turn, because his wife Julie suddenly finds a Bible and she picks it up, and he said that she started going through it a little bit and she found a few prayers and she showed him to her husband Brian. So Brian started reading them every single morning, to give him peace and to give him a little bit of comfort. It wasn't too long after that Brian took him and his family to Tennessee for a Christmas vacation. While he's in Tennessee, he meets his father-in-law, and his father-in-law says, "Hey Brian, why don't you and your family come to church with me?" So while they're at church, Brian said that him and his wife started to feel something that they had never felt before. It was like the presence of God. And he said that Brian and his wife, after that day, started reading the Bible and praying every day. And it wasn't too long after that Brian made a promise to God. And he said, "God, if you get me and my family out of this situation of the death threats with my old gang, I will give my life to you." So he said that a few months later, he decides to actually move to Tennessee where his father-in-law was. And it's at that time that he gave his life to the Lord and he got baptized. He said that when he gave his life to the Lord, he got so happy. For the first time, he actually had a genuine smile on his face. And for the first time, he felt comfort. He felt peace like he had never felt before. And it was truly a turnaround in his life. But he said that because of all the tattoos on his face, from the gang signs and all the violent tattoos on him, he could not get a job anywhere. He would go to school parent meetings and they would think he was suspicious. He would go try to sign up for all of these jobs and they wouldn't hire him because he looked like an evil man. So he said that he wanted to get him off. He looked into laser treatment. He looked into all these types of ways to get him off, but the only way he knew how was to burn him. Why did he decide to burn them? Because he didn't have the money to do laser treatments. He didn't have the finances. He didn't have a full-time job, so he couldn't get them off of his face. But then suddenly a door opened up and somebody helped him get all the tattoos off of his face. He said that everything up to the point after him getting saved was a miracle. He said that it took over 2 years and over 20 treatments on his face, but eventually his face became clear and he got all the tattoos off of his face. But that's not even the crazy part. He said all of those death threats and all of those times that the people should have come to kill him and his family, it never happened. Why? Because he made God a promise that I'll give my life to you if you keep these gang members away from me and my family. And God kept him and his family protected and safe. He never saw the gang members again, and he knew God had to be real. He said that he couldn't have done this on his own. It was only through the help of God. And now Brian and his family are devout Christians, and they have given their life to the Lord, and they're serving him every single day. Now guys, let me tell you something. You may be where Brian is right now. You may not click on this video and you say, I'm in a gang, I'm in a cult. You may not be that. But maybe you're just like Brian was before he got saved, where he says, I'm not happy, I'm not excited, I haven't had a genuine smile in years. But I'm here to tell you, all it takes is one encounter with the presence of God, just like he had at church. You can have that right now where you are. All you need to do is give your life to him. All you need to do is say, God, I give you everything. And if you watch the video that shows up on your screen right now, you can know for sure that you are going to heaven and not to hell. And I'm telling you, depression will leave your life. You'll feel such a happiness, you'll feel such a peace come inside of you that you literally cannot explain. If you click on that video, you'll be forever changed. Click on it. I love you guys. Jesus loves you. And remember that Jesus is Lord.